the feast of the Holy Family. A family that our faith traditions tell us that was predestined from the very beginning of time. A family that maybe not what the world would say was the perfect hallmark family model. You had a young mother that conceived a child out of wedlock. You had a child that required a foster father to teach him the ropes of humanity. You had a betrothed man that was going to divorce his future bride quietly due to her unexplained condition. A man, when they went to be counted, that could not even find a room in the inn for Mary to have her child. So he took her to a barn. A child that, from a human perspective, was not the easiest boy to just rein in, as we heard in today's gospel, as both Mary and Joseph were at their wits' end when they could not find their son Jesus. Thought maybe he was in the caravan somewhere with their relatives or with their acquaintances. But even so, a family that lived out God's plan for them so beautifully. A family that God gave as a gift to be a role model for all who follow his Son. A boy that was both divine and human, that as he grew up, he matured into his true nature, but he did require guidance from his mother, from his foster father, from the Spirit within him, and the larger family around him. But what about Mary and Joseph? If we look back, what did God put in place from the very beginning of time so that at the right time they would both be ready to live out their part of God's plan for salvation? So let's look backwards. First, what about the home that they grew up in? The parents that Mary and Joseph had, in the environment that they were in their home itself. Very loving, caring, stable, with very righteous teaching. Both Mary and Joseph, the teachings of Moses, the teachings of the prophets like Sirach this morning or today. As we hear about to honor Yahweh, we are to honor our mothers and our fathers and the elders around us. But what about outside of their home? In their towns and their villages, where they grew up and learned about life away from mom and dad? What was that extended family like? What did they learn? They learned how to share with those in need. They learned how to pull their fair share of the load. They learned how to defend and stand up for one another. They learned how to appreciate what God had given them. They learned how to live out God's commandments. And they obviously learned how to let Yahweh guide their lives. But for them to learn those key aspects of who they were going to be and those traditions, not only in their home, but in their villages and in their towns, then that had to be put in place from the very beginning of time. And there had to be those lessons that they would learn, that we would all learn from the very beginning of time, of right and wrong, how to act, how not to act, how to treat one another, and how not to treat one another, how to honor God himself and be thankful for everything that he gives us. So the teachings and the traditions of their ancestors must have been in place not only to guide their kinsmen, but also their town leaders, as well as the holy men and women of their villages. But we can look at this example to say, what did God put in place for them? And we can look right here at home, right here at Christ the King, and say, for each one of us, what has God put in place here in our community to not only help us learn individually, but to help our children learn as well? So we can learn in the way that we treat and talk to one another. Our willingness to reach out to a stranger. The way we collectively care for those around us that are in need of assistance. The teachings of the truth. The teachings of God's laws and his precepts. And the gratefulness in the attitude of those around us for all the gifts that God has bestowed on us as a community. This is just a small picture and opportunity of what it must have been like in the village where Mary and Joseph grew up. To help their parents mold them to be prepared for what God had planned for them. May our prayer be today a prayer of gratitude for the people and the community that he has put into our lives, so that one day, one moment, these people, this community that he's helped us be a part of, will prepare us for that time when it's our turn, individually, to say yes.